Hello, Groveland Township. Today's video is being done on July 26th, and with me today is Jeff Penzine, who is the chair of our Planning Commission. We thought we'd take this opportunity to cover a story with you to let you know what we're doing about the on and off again problems we've had with the Renaissance Festival over the years and the substantive improvements that are going to be made for it this year. If you happen to get a copy of the Citizen, you might have noticed on page 13 and followed up on, on page 7 and followed up on page 13, is an excellent story that kind of outlines most of the key points. This process has been going on since October, and we've made some real significant changes. So, Jeff, why don't you give them a little bit of the history on the process and maybe kind of the high points on the bulk of the changes that we're doing, and then we'll give them an idea what's going to happen later on.
Thanks, Bob. I just want to say, first of all, it's been an ongoing process, a collaborative effort between the township, the Planning Commission, and of course the good folks from the Renaissance Festival. I've not been, a Planning Commission member for all that long. There's a lot of history here, and from my understanding, there's a lot of room for improvement. So there was a lot of dialogue over the course of many months, as you indicate. There were many special meetings held, a lot of governmental agency involvement. It was really a culmination of effort on the part of many individuals and agencies. So I'm really pleased at the recommendation that was made to the board.
In fact, to that point, initially when I started this in October, we had the Michigan State Police, the Oakland County Sheriff, the Planning Commission from Holly Township, Holly Township Executive Management, the Fire Department from Holly Township, and then the Fire Department and our team here managed with as well as the Planning Commission. So everybody we thought had a vested interest in how this could be improved was involved in it. And a couple of key points came out quite early in those discussions, specifically from both the state police and the Oakland County Sheriff in unison, really, as to what they thought. And so maybe you want to go over some of those ideas.
Well, I mean, there were obviously some root causes, if you will, for the historical problems that had plagued the festival. Parking, traffic flow, just giving attendees, adequate notice of conditions at the venue as they're arriving. And many of these folks come from a distance.
Yes.
They've invested time to travel many miles, so they don't want to get there only to be frustrated upon their arrival. So, the Renaissance Festival people were very, very willing, very cooperative, very engaged in, our efforts and our objectives to make some really important improvements in the way that the crowds are handled. And these are big crowds for our township. These are, it's fairly the equivalent of, a baseball game at Comerica Park happening right here on Dixie Highway, three times every weekend.
Total attendance varies from year to year, but it's commonly in the 225 to 300,000 people a year on 7 weekends. And the issue is it's almost exclusively been the last 3 weekends where we potentially run into problems, because some of those days they get up over 25, 30,000 people, and that's where things kind of really break down in the current system.
I really learned a lot about just the identification of issues and what needs to be done still in the future. This season's event, we believe we've put some really wonderful, kind of thoughtful improvements in place. The festival's agreed to them. Township Board has approved their special use permit. So we're very hopeful, but ultimately there's statistical data that's needed.
Right.
We've retained
Fishback.
consultant, substance matter consultants who are gonna advise us and collect data that's going to be useful in terms of identifying what needs to be done going forward to make next year's event and the years that come even better. So, I'm very optimistic. The festival's been willing to take on what we've asked them to do for this year's event, and we'll hope for the best. But as far as the recommendations or the issues that were identified by the state police and the county sheriff's department. One of the biggest problems was with the configuration of the ingress and egress of traffic into the
Absolutely.
into the lot for the Renaissance Festival off Dixie Highway. Their recommendation was to add another access point, which is not an easy undertaking, but the festivals agreed to do that. And so that's really, in my opinion, the primary important part that they've undertaken.
It probably is, because without hesitation, both the Oakland County Sheriff and the Michigan State Police at the early meeting said that is the problem. You have too much congestion where they're coming in and going out. You need more access points than what you have now, and that will fix, in their opinion, they thought, the bulk of the problem. So to that end, the festival's cutting in that other driveway that's going to be south of the most southerly driveway they have right now, coming out on the frontage of the property they own on Dixie Highway. That, with some of these other changes, we think will really make some significant improvements this year.
And the addition of the access drive does enable a one-way traffic flow, which in years past has been a problem because you get folks coming in, and at certain times the traffic counts are very high. So you get folks coming in. At the same time, you get folks trying to leave, and it's inherently problematic, and it just lends to
snowballs.
It lends to backups, right? So the access road that is being constructed as we speak, as I understand it, is going to enable a one-way traffic flow around the entire south lot of the Renaissance Festival parking, which is huge.
Yes. Yep. You want to talk about a couple of the other things that we did too, because the neighbors that live like on Perryville and Leering are always concerned about the traffic that gets kind of jammed up there, and in the past we've actually had difficult times getting ambulance or police cars in and out, and so one of the key things we worked on this year was that has got to stop. And it's kind of comical because initially some people said, well, put up more no parking signs, and the state police were quick to say, you can post all the signs you want there. The people already know they don't belong there. So what they suggested we do is put up signs at the beginning of the entry to the road that says, no parking on this road, violators will be towed. And that sets a clear message for them. Plus, the Renaissance Festival's implemented some software changes in an application they put up, which they'll be able to tell people, if you're parked on, for example, Perryville Road, you're going to get towed in 15 minutes. And to help facilitate that this year, we're going to actually, under our own ordinance provisions, allow me, the fire chief, and 2 other people to be able to call the local tower to get them out if we think there's congestion there. So that's another big improvement, I think, for the residents that are probably most impacted. And then they made some additional changes as well for them on the signage. A lot of them that come out on Perryville were concerned that the sheriff didn't necessarily realize they were a resident there. They used to hang something on the mirror, I think, or put it in the window, and it was harder to notice. So the Renaissance Festival bought these flags. They're similar to the flags they put on at sports games or funerals, on the outside of the car, because they're very easy to notice, and we think that will also help with them. There's a whole host of changes besides that, though, in the signage. You want to tell them what we're going to do on Dixie and I-75?
Well, there's additional signage that will be posted along I-75, I believe at Grange Hall and Holly Roads, to alert incoming traffic as to the conditions at the venue. Obviously, the sooner you can let people know about backups, the sooner they can avoid issues and compound the problem. So there's going to be additional signage, and I believe historically there's been signage on I-75.
Yeah, they have, and for some reason they weren't there last year, but they're going to be required every year going forward. It's actually at Grange Hall Road, exit 101 if you're going north, and on the south in Holly it's at exit 106, which is Dixie Highway.
Right.
Those are the 2 that are going to have the electronic signs, which the festival will now be able to control the wording on. And they're also going to put a sign on north and southbound Dixie that the festival can also control.
Right.
So we think that has some additional benefit to, as you say, letting people know before they get to the maximum frustration if the festival's full or not. But what's the other key thing that's happening, though, when they find out it's full?
Yeah, and this was a really significant give on the part of the festival, and that's a trigger for a shutdown. If there becomes any point in time during the festival weekends where there's a 2-mile backup from from the entrance points along Dixie Highway, there is a system in place that the festival will be closed, and those who are waiting in line along Dixie Highway will be denied access.
And
That's
they'll
my
just flag them
understanding.
on by.
Correct.
And so that should eliminate the worst of the conditions we had in the past where it would back up and then all of a sudden it would be backed up in front of the fire station, making it hard for the fire personnel to get their equipment out, down Grange Hall Road and onto I-75. The purpose is to keep that traffic moving, and they've done it a couple of times in very limited cases, and it clears up in about 10 or 15 minutes when you do that. But again, it's going to be done because we don't want to have a situation where the ambulance can only go north if it runs down the wrong side of the road against oncoming traffic. That's not safe. We don't want to have them unable to get out of the building. And so that concession, I agree, is major, and we think that and the road and the signage should make significant improvements for this year. But as we said earlier, the real key to this is the whole goal that you had the Planning Commission working on was to figure out how do we fix it, not this year hopefully, but beyond this year going forward, what are the vehicles that will work. So Fishbeck, a very well-regarded consulting firm, along with Rowe, the one that does most of the site plans for the festival, are going to be doing data collection and analysis. And with that, at the post-festival interval, after they're all done, we're going to look at that data. They're going to come up with, here's what I think you need to do next, and here's what worked well, what didn't work, and here's what we need to change. And that, I think, is the key. And those changes, once we get them, will ultimately be included, like this year, in the list of what's required to happen with the festival every year going forward.
Right, yeah, it's just common sense, at least in my view, that you cannot devise, you cannot come up with a cure unless you diagnose your ills.
That's
and
right.
So I don't know about traffic flow and parking and all of the minutia that goes into crowd control for events of this size. So, you know, the commission's, I guess, intervention in recommending a subject matter expert be retained was really, I thought that was hugely beneficial because
Absolutely.
It's going to be an outside third party that's going to advise us as to what the statistical data tells them is the cure.
And, you know, I think ultimately, if this works the way we all hope it does, it's not just to help us manage the traffic, but it should help the festival figure out how do I make sure that the patrons come here are happy and enjoy the experience, because there's less frustration as opposed to having 100 cars towed away or whatever.
And in the statistical data, just to be clear, it's not just folks, bodies that pass through the turnstile, but it's traffic counts, number of vehicles, it's
Time of day.
Time of day, because it's my understanding folks will arrive early, sometimes in advance of the opening, and then there's a lull, and then midday people the second wave. So having that stuff tabulated and those counts measured with some precision will be hugely beneficial, when that is interpreted by experts, and then we could be intelligently advised as to how to make recommendations going forward.
Yep. So I'm pretty confident that this year's changes will be significantly improved, but we'll know more after the festival. And when we find out if things have got to change again, we'll notify you in a future video of what comes out of that. It'll be after the festival closes. We always know it's the last three. Part of the problem is sometimes things happen, and without any plan B, so to speak, they've been hard to adjust. For example, when they decided to repave I-75 a few years ago, made a huge mess at the festival. None of us really knew it then. But we found out about it subsequently, and then when they repaved Dixie Highway a couple of years ago, we made sure that the paving of Dixie Highway was staggered before or after the festival. So those are the kinds of things that we think we can make a positive change in for this year, but we believe that the ultimate solution will be much better when we look at all of the statistical data. I'm pretty confident this is going to be better. The one thing we don't know is I can't tell you if 225,000 people show up this year, or because they're still tired of being locked up from COVID, we get 350,000 people, and that's kind of the wild card.
Personally, my expectation is the latter. I mean, I was hearing on the radio just this morning that the Ann Arbor Art Festival was just this last weekend, and they had, you know, a really sizable turnout, like in comparison to past years, a significant increase in turnout. So I think people are going to be...
Yeah, I think there's high frustration from being restricted all the last 2.5 years.
And, you know, just getting people out is exciting. It's, you know, kind of resuming life as we knew it. But that goes also to staffing. You know, that's another big focus, or that was a big focus of the commission with regard to the festival. Yeah, just having enough folks there in the morning to go over, you know, what the contingency plan is for that day. So, you know, the festival's taken on additional staffing requirements with regard to parking and traffic flow. You know, they've entered into an agreement with Flushing boosters to have a certain minimum of individuals on hand every day.
Yeah, it's a significant increase over last year's too.
That's my understanding, absolutely.
And there are going to be some chalking and marking to help make sure the parking area is fully utilized, because last year we know there was about 8 or 8.5 acres that never got used. And so designating the area better and having more people to move the traffic where you want it should also help get the fill up and move the traffic off the road much better.
Yes. Statistically, based upon the size of their parking area, in terms of their historical attendance data, we should have more than ample parking. But you're right, Bob. What they've done, they've agreed to chalk it so that none of that space goes to waste. It's utilized to its max capacity, and hopefully that, you know, when you add all these elements together, the hope is that we're going to have a better festival experience in 2022.
So I just want to compliment Jeff and the Planning Commission. I think they put a very committed and hard effort together at trying to get this problem identified and fixed. I'm confident it will be much better than it would be if we hadn't made these changes. And as to whether or not it's the end of the changes, we won't know until after the festival. So until the next video, Groveland, have a great day. Be safe out there. Enjoy the summer, and we'll see how the festival goes this year. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.